Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public and Corporate Services Standing Committee of February 28th. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. I'm looking for an adoption of this agenda. Moved by Ted, seconded by Doug. All in favor? Carried. Looking at the committee minutes, looking for an approval and an adoption of the minutes of January 24th, 2017 from the last Public Services Standing Committee. Moved by Sue, seconded by Ted. All in favor? And any business arising from those minutes? Nope, seeing none, moving on to the business at hand. And Ms. Alexis Craig, the floor is yours from Squamish Emergency Services.
So excited. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexis Craig, and I'm the emergency coordinator for the District of Squamish. First, I'd like to send regrets of search and rescue. They were supposed to be here this evening, but had an emergency and canceled late last night. But we're still going to go forward, and we'll talk about the emergency program. The first thing I'd like to do is actually get your input into what you think are the top two concerns for the District of Squamish in terms of emergencies. I've been going around to each department and getting their input, and it's been really interesting to see what people place as the most important thing that we should be working on, and it's helping me to build my work plan, and I would be really curious. And so I've given you some bright paper, and it's going to be sitting on my wall for inspiration later on, but I need you to tell me what you think are your top two major concerns in terms of emergency management. And you can take a few minutes to think about it.
How much time do we get?
5.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Do we get a prize for first name?
Let me guess. You were like, if you wanted to expand these
No copying each other's homework.
It's been a really great exercise to do with different departments because it's so interesting to see how one group, for example, operations, is all about like dive maintenance, and another group is all about like, okay, we need to have emergency kits, or how do we make sure that we have response guidelines and stuff like that. So it's quite learning everyone's perspective.
Want to just slide these down?
Yes.
For those of you watching at home, I'm sorry there's no musical interlude.
Sing us a tune.
Me? Oh. Maybe Doug was the singer.
Only in groups.
Only after Scotch.
And
So we have things like the preparation of our citizens' evacuation plan, responses, fire in the highlands, running up the hill, flooding, disaster planning, community protection, fire planning, dikes, barrier protection. And we've got flood and wildfire. So just to kind of see the concerns that we think are the most pertinent. Today, I'm just going to talk first about money in disasters and just what that looks like in small scale, as well as what we have done in 2016 in the emergency program and where we're going in 2017. Recently, I went to Emergency Management BC in Victoria and represented the province on a rewrite of the financial response guidelines, and I was put into a room of all financial managers, and there two local emergency managers, and it was so interesting to be around people and look at emergency management from a financial perspective. And I'd never actually taken the time to be like, some people just look at it in terms of cost. And so what was really interesting to learn about was the fact that we always focus on big disasters, and like the Fort McMurrays, the Calgarys, the ones that become the headlines for the news. And these are always like the ones in the $3.5 billion, the whole community is really impacted, but there is small disasters that happen on a regular basis every year, and they are quite costly to small communities like Squamish. And so while I was there, I asked the response and financial people to pull up some of 2016 of disasters on communities the same size as Squamish. So the demographics being anything under 20,000 people and the same kind of topography and hazards. And so I just want to give you a couple examples. So in 2016, a community very similar to Squamish had a 1-hour flash flood that cost $1.5 million in recovery. So that price tag is only the stuff that was eligible for reimbursement. So it probably cost quite significantly more, but think about that, 1 hour, $1.5 million. And another one in a community very similar to Squamish was a landslide and debris flow that cost $800,000 in response costs. This one didn't even really make any news within the community when it happened. It only impacted a road and 2 infrastructures, but it still had a price tag of $800,000. And then another weather event, because it rains a lot in the Lower Mainland, is, and this one is a response cost. So this is what happened in the period of just one day, but it cost $1.1 million was the price tag that was rolled up to the province. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that even those small events that we have on a frequent basis within Squamish, they can have a huge price tag and have a huge impact to our community. But the good news is that emergency preparedness savings, another thing I learned by hanging out with finance people, is so that $1 we spend on emergency preparedness, we have a cost saving of $47 in response. So all those activities, and not just the tangible fixing the dike, those kind of things, but all the things that we're doing in terms of emergency preparedness, our training of our staff, our training of our community is helping to build community resiliency. And every time that we work towards emergency preparedness, that means we have a cost savings for when we actually have a response. So there's my financial piece. And now I'm going to go into what we have done in 2016. And what I wanted to focus on today is not the public-facing stuff, the things that you're probably aware of, like the Operation Gumboots or the Squamish Alert, but more behind the scenes of stuff that we've done that are quite important to the foundation of our program. The first one is our all-hazard plan. So essentially there's 2 legislative requirements from the province of what we need to do in terms of emergency management. And the first one is we need to have an emergency plan. Last year we fulfilled this requirement by the adoption of the all-hazard plan. And that basically outlines our roles and responsibilities. It's kind of our guide in which we operate in emergencies. And from this, we're building, so it was our foundation piece, and now we're building our evacuation plan, our flood plan, our wildfire plan. They all kind of tie into what we started with the all-hazard plan. The next big thing is our emergency social services. So this is our second legal requirement from the province of what we must do as a community. And this team has had a very active year in 2016. 2 years ago, we had 2 people, and now we have a really robust 19-person team. They have supported not only our community, so they had 5 responses within our community last year, but they've supported the corridor. So they went up to Pemberton, Lillooet Nation, SLRD when they were flooding and provided support to their evacuees. And they've also supported Fort McMurray, so when people were getting evacuated, they helped the people here that evacuated to Squamish, as well as we deployed people to the Peace region when they were flooding. So because we have adopted the Red Cross model, it allows our volunteers to gain experience on a national level, and provincial and national level, and it creates volunteer retention and makes us have a great team that can be utilized. And the next one, which people often, and myself included, don't realize the importance of the financial assistance from the province. So we finished in 2016 a claim in 2014. And our EOC was open for 1.5 days, and it took us 2 years to finally wrap up the whole claim. So we got about approximately $350,000 back, but the amount of paperwork and how to put together a recovery claim is quite time intensive for staff. But we did a really good job, and the province actually came back to us and said it was one of the best claims they've ever seen. So that's both the engineering, operations, and the finance department all working together to complete a claim that no one really sees or advertises about. Another big thing that happened within our the emergency program last year was our community engagement. So this happens on various levels. We try to target vulnerable populations. So we go out to schools, senior homes, daycares, any group, and we give them kind of workshops in terms of how they themselves can be prepared. But in 2016, what we also did was we had Squamish Alert ambassadors. So we had people going out to community events and getting people signed up for the Squamish Alert.
Who's that handsome guy in the corner?
I don't know.
Thank you for asking.
It's one of our seniors. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I'm sure you did.
Another major achievement for 2016 was our partnership with Squamish Nation. So we worked very closely with them in terms of developing an emergency management partnership. And this is really important because their community is within our community. Their pockets within our community, and if they had to evacuate or if there's any emergency, we're going to need to work together. And so we did joint training, we hosted the evacuation exercise, and we also, at the end of last year, their council adopted forming an emergency management committee. So they're actually going to have people represented in taking this forward within their organization. And in 2017, we've started to already identify what we're going to work on together this year. And finally, emergency management training. So a big piece of the emergency program is ensuring that our staff are trained to the best level to respond to an emergency. And last year we had more than 130 personnel receive emergency training. The RCMP and the emergency program partnered together to go out to all the responders and give evacuation training. This is search and rescue, Marine Search and Rescue, ESS, Red Cross, Squamish Nation volunteers, district staff. And this is our hope to make everything standard so that if we do have to respond to evacuate our community, everyone has had the same training and are on the same page. So those are some of our big highlights. I've given you the review if you get time. I hope you read it. And then where we're going in 2017. So 2016 was foundation. We spent that year trying to build a strong foundation in all our areas. In 2017, we're only going to be focusing on 3 areas. So in emergency plans, we want to complete our evacuation plan, the flood response plan, as well as the community wildfire protection plan. Those are all things that you've actually highlighted in your papers. And in terms of emergency management training, last year we realized our staff have a solid foundation. Our EOC core team, during the exercise, we do really well in terms of disasters we understand, like floods. But this year we're going to try to focus on more specialized training within the group. So we're going to have just meet 4 times a year our EOC core team and look at lots of hazards that we may not necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis that we don't actually own. So it might be another organization taking the lead.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? And that was one of my questions, was asking about, you had said that our team had gone out and worked with other groups to get a broader knowledge of some of these other disasters. I was wondering, have we had any experience with earthquake?
Earthquake is in terms of doing exercise in terms of earthquake.
Yeah.
We've never done, since I've been here, I know that in the past there has been exercise where they've talked about an earthquake exercise, but we have never done it. We've actually kind of focused on our primary disasters, which are flood, wildfire, and debris flow. So those are kind of when we have our scenarios. But every year the staff do shakeout, which all staff practice getting underneath the desk.
Thanks.
Emergency organizational readiness, we just want to make sure that everything is dialed. So our EOC is basically a turn and go kind of thing, and as well as our alternate EOC site. So we want to have all our processes and equipment completely ready to go for an emergency. So that is the focus. And what we are really seeing and what we want to see move forward is how emergency management is moving throughout the organization. It's been really great to see how every department has kind of taken a piece of this and realized the importance of it and contribute to the emergency program. So thank you very much. Again, I apologize that you don't get search and rescue pictures today, but I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone have a question? Doug?
Yeah, partly question, partly comment. One of the things, I was the one, or one of the people that put wildfire down, and so you think about flood, which is a significant risk in this community, and we have all kinds of regulations about flood construction levels and areas that we can and cannot build in because of flood. But with wildfire, I'm not sure that we do have the same approach to it. And I remember when I was practicing law and doing conveyancing, I was acting a couple of times for people in the Okanagan that were buying property. And you go through the documents on title, and they have restrictive covenants in some of the areas around Kelowna, for example, where they're very prescriptive about what kind of vegetation you can have between the house and some distance away. And so there's, within 10 meters of the house, you're only allowed to have certain vegetation, like grasses, for example, and then shrubs can happen, and then farther away you can get into larger trees and so forth. And I don't know that we have it, and that's obviously because of the wildfire risk they have there, and we've seen a couple of examples of that. And that's a drier climate, granted, but one of the dangers, I think, in this area is a wildfire in a really hot, dry summer. We're surrounded by forests, and we have forests kind of running right through the community. And I don't know that we actually have that kind of tool, if you like, or if we take that approach in our planning. And I know there's nobody here from the planning department, but do you ever feed into planning? Do you ever have these discussions with planning? And I think of just right now, for example, we have a couple of developments that are right on the edge of forest. Skyridge is one, and Potential in the Chikai Fan is another one, where it's surrounded by existing forests. And so if you just cut away the part that you're going to develop and leave the forest, is that presenting an unacceptable risk? And I don't know if you have any comments on that, or if that's a direction that we might consider going in sometime with our planning.
So we do tie into planning for many things, including wildfire, and within the update to the OCP, it's going into more detail in terms of us moving towards a fire smart community. And with us writing the community wildfire protection plan this year, that's going to be basically our recipe book for how we would deal with those areas. So it will be like almost like an overview, and so that we can get to a place where we would have prescribed, put onto different land and stuff like that where we're developing.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Chief Sonner, I see you're here. Would you like to add anything further to that?
Ms. Craig covered it perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming, Sue.
Thanks for the presentation, that was excellent. I'm not sure if I saw it in the budget or if it was below the line, the community hubs, the containers that were going to be placed around the community.
So we did a lot last year, and it was great, and we were successful in all our things, but we realized that this is not a sprint and it's a marathon. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is that pick things that we're going to do really well this year. So the neighborhood hubs is definitely one of our projects, but we're actually targeting it more for 2018. And I am working still with the planning to actually have it in the OCP so that it's identified, and it's just not something that we are going to budget for this year.
I'm going to throw myself on the list. I think for me, the reason I brought up earthquake is because I think you know that in Oregon they have the Cascadia Manual, and we're seeing a lot of activity north of us here, like the Haida Gwaii area, and I know that there's going to be activity at some point with the Cascadia plate, that subduction plate, and I'm just kind of curious as to where we might be going with that, because we only have one access road in and out of here, so that's going to present a big problem. And just kind of trying to get a general idea on what our earthquake preparedness might look like.
So in terms of the Cascadia, that's actually not. We are actually identified within the provincial earthquake plan as a logistics support hub, because if we had a Cascadia earthquake that impacted Vancouver and stuff like that, we would be sitting relatively good. If we had a crustal earthquake, that would be really bad for us. In terms of, but recognizing still that if we did have an earthquake in the lower mainland, it may still impact our highway. One thing I didn't mention in the presentation is we are partnering with Whistler this year, and didn't go forward in the budget, is to do an actually quarter-wide evacuation plan. So looking at what that would look like if we got cut off in terms of the whole sea to sky corridor in terms of evacuation. And then in terms of earthquake planning, we're still trying to get our foundations in the major disasters, but we still, as an organization, prepare for earthquakes.
Thank you, appreciate that. Karen?
A couple of questions, Alexis. What are our numbers now for people who've signed up for the e-alert system? And also, does the emergency organizational readiness include business disruption? So like if the community hall burnt down, or we couldn't use this building, or operations? So not just our EOC, but everything.
So the first question, if you actually open the review, and there's an actual at a glance, and it's got nice numbers. I can say it's around almost 2,000 people. So on that page right there, the first number is so that's how many people have signed up right now. And then in terms of business continuity and recovery, we have identified that as an important action. And so I'm working with Conrad. It's not one of my deliverables for 2017, but I am working with Conrad to kind of map it out and figure out how we will have everything ready to go. So we'll have a roadmap in place so that when we head into 2018, we can work on business continuity recovery. And our rationale is just that we want to focus on building the foundation for response, and then we'll look into that.
Can I follow up?
Yeah.
Are we going to have another push to get people signed up for the alert? Like, is that part of your plan this year, is to still be out in the community?
Yeah, so I've been waiting for a bad weather day to get so ideally our push will be either during events, so like when we had in February, we did put stuff on the website for when we have bad weather or when people are actually thinking about it, and then as well as in May when we have Emergency Preparedness Week. So I'm trying to figure out something to do in May to give another push. So anytime, so either Emergency Preparedness Week, Shakeout, or if we have an emergency event, will be when we try to push people to sign up.
Great looking document. Is this available to the public?
I hadn't thought that it was built and intended for our audience, as in our CLT team and council, but I can put it on the website.
I think there's a lot of great information here that could benefit the public, just even at a glance still. Mr. Sim?
Yeah, thank you, Council. I just wanted to follow up on a comment that Alexis made on following up on your question about the business continuity. And so it's really important from an emergency perspective that Alexis connect with business leaders throughout the district. So whether it's IT or other areas, to give some thought to business continuity. But the whole aspect of business continuity is I'll use this term, profession among itself, or a discipline among itself. So it will be, as Alexis already pointed out, not within sort of her deliverables this year, but I think identifying some of those core areas, and then we'll have to circle back to say who's best to lead this, or is it an outsider, or whatever the case may be for moving forward, because it's the whole aspect of business continuity is very robust and extent, and probably beyond the emergency program capacity and ability, I think. Not to take away from anything, but based on some of our discussions that we've had, Alexis.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Chief Stone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to our next item, which is the 2016 Film Statistics and Policy Amendments with Devin Guest, the lovely and talented.
Hi, good morning, Chair
morning.
and Council. I'm going to take a moment and pull up a few websites that will be referenced in the presentation. coming up as well.
There's a link in the
Oh.
PowerPoint for both.
So I'll just take a moment. My name is Debbie Guest, and I'm the film and event manager here at the District of Squamish. And beside me is Sean Cummings, location consultant for Creative BC. I invited Creative BC here today to join us to give kind of an industry overview of what BC looks like. It's been quite a few years. 2013 was the last time Creative BC came up to give an overall presentation. And I thought, given what Squamish has been experiencing over the last couple of years, it was time to have a little check-in. I had also invited Jason Fullerton, General Manager of the Check-In Center, to come and chat with us today about what he has been experiencing in the last couple of years within the film industry. Unfortunately, yesterday he was unable to, he had to pull out, sends his apologies. He did, however, send along, I'll call it this memo for council, if I may pass this along.
Please do, thanks.
Thank you. And so, without switching back to my presentation, I thought the order that we tackle this today would be to let Sean give his presentation, and then we would go into the statistics of 2016 for Squamish specifically, and look at some of the benchmarking and metrics and revenue that we've seen over 2016, and then go into looking at the policy amendments that I'm recommending to council. So if that makes sense to everyone, then I'll turn it over to Sean, and we'll go from there.
Please do. Welcome, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about, just briefly touch on in a broad strokes fashion what Creative BC does, how we are a resource for the province and the industry, and then talk about some best practices that we like to participate in regards to environmental concerns and code of conduct with our crews in the communities. So, Creative BC is an amalgamation of what used to be called the Film Commission, as well as other aspects of the creative industries in the province. So film and television, interactive and digital media, music and sound recording, as well as publishing. So I specifically work in the Film and Television Division, otherwise known as Production Services, otherwise known as the Film Commission of the province. In 2013, we were given a mandate to head up programs and encourage investment in the province, as well as partner with the unions and be a catalyst for growth in the province, specifically bringing money into the province as a service center for the film industry. So at Creative BC, we manage the tax incentives aspects of film investment in the province. So after a production films, they file their report back to Creative BC, and that's how they get their tax rebates back, tax incentives. Location services, we run a location library. So there's a database that I work with every day of files from across the province, from every community of homes and factories and schools. And so when a producer is looking at BC as a place to film, they send the script to me, I do a breakdown of it, and then I come up with ideas of how they can film in various communities. Sometimes they say, Squamish, hey, I was in Squamish last time, can you show me some files in Squamish, that kind of thing. And then they would come, to the province, and we do a survey with them, show them perhaps places they haven't seen, or maybe they've never been to the province. Okay. All with the point of bringing money here into BC. So, the World of Looks Location Library. so that would be our database. We are a resource for locations, so specifically if somebody is wondering about how they film in a community, then we have a relationship with the film offices in the various places. I say phone this person at Maple Ridge, or this person's Squamish, that kind of thing. Surveys, we would, again, when a producer comes in from out of town, I will take them around and show them what BC has to offer, or at least me specifically, the Lower Mainland. Every region will have their own film commissioner. For instance, in the Okanagan, there's somebody specifically just for the Okanagan. Pretty much everybody who works at the Film Commission is worked previously in the film industry, so we actually bring knowledge about the industry itself. When a show is having specific issues that they need help with, that they need guidance with, they can call us and we can talk them through it, because we perhaps know somebody who can help them, or we have helped them directly. Community affairs is a large part of what we do, specifically with regards to issues of stress or tension or issues between the communities and or the businesses and the film industry. We'd like to play a part in that, in monitoring, negotiating a settlement of issues. Real Green is an environmental initiative that's been going on for about 10 years, initiated in New Zealand and with Warner Brothers, and now we've adopted it as an overall provincial initiative. And then we monitor, and any given week we know what's going on in the province with regards to shows that are here, and hopefully in what communities that they're in. So the motion picture industry in BC brings in about $2.2 billion annually. Our estimates are about 40,000 people in the province are directly involved with the film industry. There's over 100 stages representing about $1 billion in infrastructure. The economy, the industry contributes to the economy in a diverse way with regards to creative industries directly, bringing in foreign investment, encouraging tourism, and contributing to the technology sector. The Global Center of Excellence. We are probably the largest center in the world right now for visual effects, probably comparable to London, England, with regards to the companies that are set up here, the work that comes in specifically for animation, video games, visual effects in movies, even if they're filmed somewhere else. For instance, one show with dragons. The dragon work would be done here. Just as an example, they would send the footage here and then, or elephants, or whatever. Every shop has their own bears, but every shop would have their specialization. It could be sea, it could be the waves. Sorry. So, as a whole, in the province, there are many stakeholders that have a direct interest. We are in contact with all the stakeholders. We are a partner with them. We are a resource for them. We have a relationship with them, and if we are often involved in being a part of the solution to any issues that come up with regards to labor unions, cities, First Nations issues, all of those listed up there. Educational institutions. In BC, these are an example of all the different companies that are doing business right now here.
And I'll just quickly point out, we, in terms of the major players that you see up there, we see a lot of Warner Brother, and we see a lot, maybe an inaccurate term, we see the most coming from Warner Brothers and Walt Disney.
Warner Brothers has a lot of TV shows being shot in BC right These are local companies that do some of their own work as well as their service companies for international distributors that farm out the work to local companies.
Lionsgate just took Best Picture at the Oscars. Local company.
And we see, in Squamish, we see Front Street Productions here also.
That should be, sorry,
Go ahead.
if Lionsgate took Academy Award and it's a Squamish company, that should be.
It's a Vancouver company.
Hmm?
It's a
Vancouver.
Vancouver company. Sean speaking to BC.
Okay.
Yeah. Lionsgate has a strong history in BC, where their head office is today. But they,
Well, it still could be a press release, like in our annual release of information that the district puts up on their Facebook page. If they do a lot of work here, that's still a connection.
And then there's a group of companies specifically that service commercials, that come in and will shoot a soap commercial or a car commercial.
And I'll just interject here again. Out of the 61 productions we saw here in Squamish in 2016, 22 of them were made up of commercials, and a large majority of those commercials were brought in by means of production or film group.
The challenges and opportunities presented by the industry. So in attracting funds, in attracting investment to BC, this is essentially what we have to deal with. There is a lot of centers throughout the world that are aggressively competing for the film dollars. Specifically in Ontario and Quebec, they have what's called an all-spend tax credit. So they just say, whereas in BC, the tax credit is specifically linked to labor spent. In Ontario and Quebec, it's everything you spend. So some producers find the all-spend more attractive. But in BC, there's been, the philosophy's not that the philosophy is directly attached to labor. The US dollar fluctuation, we are at the, I guess you'd say, mercy of that. It happens, it goes up and down, right? Of course, when the Canadian dollar is, the lower the value of the Canadian dollar is directly related to how much money comes here from the US.
Okay. May I interrupt just on that for 1 second? I know that a lot of the producers in the US, especially the bigger ones, the studios, try to forecast how the dollar is going to react and then sort of buy ahead in Canadian so that when they're ready to come here, they can take advantage of that. So they sort of, tie that in with their model. Are you finding that still? They used to anyway.
I don't find that Americans buying Canadian dollars, it's not really part of what we track. It's not, we can monitor the level of activity based comparable to the value of the Canadian dollar.
Right.
But how people transfer money from American into Canadian is
You
not really
wouldn't know
something we
that.
have access to, yeah. But it's an interesting.
Are you
question.
finding that the dollar is driving a lot of production right now, or our dollar being in relation to the US? Is that a big factor
Yes.
in production right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that it's directly
I think so,
related.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it's just one,
Yeah,
but
probably the number one.
for instance, when reality shows became what viewers wanted, production by Hollywood in scripted drama went down. So it went down everywhere.
Yeah.
So that affected it. And when the Canadian dollar and the American dollar were at par, that was a dip. It didn't go away completely because BC has specific things to offer that aren't affected by the American dollar. But if you have an American producer who needs to make a show that's set in Seattle or anywhere that's not specifically Vancouver, the people in charge with the money aren't above saying, just make it happen in Vancouver. Just make it happen. Because our dollar is going to get farther, and the more money you can put on screen, the the basic understanding is that you're going to get a better product, and it's going to be a better product. So, well, they'll say, well, sure, this is set in Manhattan, just make it happen. Sure, we're not going to get a specific Manhattan downtown, or we're not going to get Port Angeles, the actual Port Angeles, but
There's plenty of stock footage.
the viewers aren't going to know that either, right? Though a walk and talk downtown Port Angeles can be done in Squamish, it can be done in Steveston View, or unless you're from Port Angeles, it's not going to know it.
Sure. Thank you.
And of course, part of the aspect of any industry, as it becomes more busy, the demand for higher fees happens, right? The perception of how much you can charge for your location, or how much employees want for a rate rises, and that's a challenge. And the high level of production itself presents stress on the community and stress on the infrastructure of the studios, which is another challenge for us. So to review, BC offers financial incentives as far as tax credits go. We are the third largest center in North America, so we have the infrastructure and the crew, expert crew and cast. We have the locations and the infrastructure, what we like to call it Creative BC, a world of looks. In BC, you want to film anything, anywhere. Unless you want to film the Eiffel Tower, we can provide you with Europe, inner city, a farm, coastline. We can get you that, no matter what you want to film. Again, we have over 100 stages in the province that are exclusively just to film and television, and we're only about 2.5, 3 hour flight from Los Angeles. So a producer, because it does come back to the personal oftentimes, a producer in theory could, I could get my kids off to school, hop on a plane, get to Vancouver, essentially meet the actors for lunch if there's an issue, and really I could hop back on a plane and tuck my kids back in bed at night. That kind of thing. Sometimes it comes down to that. So when choosing a location, there's the creative aspects to it. A producer or director will always have multiple options to choose from. The locations are then shortlisted based on creative and logistical issues. They then go and do a survey of the location to figure out which one's going to work best, and then they decide upon one. So it essentially comes down to two things. One is logistical, the other is creative. So on creatively, everything is, I think we already touched on this, many different, everything that's needed, everything that appears on screen, with the exception of stock footage, is what they need to capture for their stories, from houses to railways to factories. And this is what we come back to the 4 A's of a location: availability, agility, accessibility, and affordability. That's essentially what it comes down to every single time a producer or a creative person chooses a location. Now, from our communities that we're filming in, everybody needs notification of what they want to do, ongoing communication. There's impacts to our communities through parking, impacts to access to businesses and streets. Then there's nighttime shooting issues with regard to how late you're going to film. So there's lights and noise, right, that are affecting the communities. Impacts to special effects. So again, loud noises, safety issues.
And I will just point out to this that our policies and procedures support these in terms of community expectations. So everything from our filming policy down to special effect permits, or to our noise bylaw and our noise exemption certificates.
And compensation for use and compensation for the impact on the businesses, of course, is always an issue when you're filming your business. So we have recommendations with regards to policies and guidelines, a clear statement of support for the industry from the councils of the municipalities. If you start from a yes and work towards a compromise and alternative, that's good for the film industry and for keeping the business coming. Cost reflective recovery policy statement for services. So making sure that you're connecting what the services you're providing are directly related to the cost of those services. Recognition of need for flexibility in the creative process. So a really short, quick way I can describe this is, let's say that I'm a location manager on a movie and we have a couple of days in Squamish and the rest of it's going to be downtown. And for some reason on the schedule, they have a walk and talk with 2 actors that has to be dropped from the gas town. You just don't have time for it. And a location manager is told, make it happen in Squamish. Find a place where it can look like it's downtown, walk in front of a bunch of businesses. We've got to make this work. So, and we could be told that 2 days before it has to happen. So those are the kind of real world logistical issues that come up. We also have to do notification and making sure everybody's talked to and parking this would be one of those situations where it could cause a lot of stress on the communities. And being able to find all the permitting policies online applications is helpful.
And again, when the film policy was introduced, we looked at a number of Lower Mainland policies, and they all are fairly similar, and we all generally align with the customer service and support, both from the community perspective as well as the industry. So if you have reviewed our film policy in the last little while, you'll see a lot of the common thread.
So with regards to Squamish specifically, when we communicate with the 2 top payroll companies in BC for union shows, and we give them Squamish's postal code, which is that map there. In that postal code, the information we get back is there's 149 employees in that postal code. In 2015, brought in $2.5 million in salaries.
So that 149 employees represents unique social insurance numbers, and in a slide that I have in my presentation, I can show you the historical postal code numbers.
Good.
Well, just on this slide here, is that just wages or is that compensation to stores and things like that?
That's just from the payroll companies, so that would be to the checks that an individual receives.
So that would be cast and crew and all of that.
Yeah.
NEP,
Anybody?
cast and crew, NEP, and then those 2 get consolidated by Creative BC and reported to the
And
news.
this-
But not the stores.
Correct.
No,
That would be a
That
different
would be
check.
payroll.
That's in here, it's in.
Sue?
So that's not necessarily people that are working in Squamish, that's union members that are working in Vancouver that have to travel down the highway.
correct.
So it isn't actually local employment, it's employment of our people that are working in IA that move down to the city to do production work and may do a day or 2 up here.
Exactly. Right. So this is every employee from the company's cast and crew and EP Canada, their paychecks. People who have a home address of that area code, of the postal code.
Correct.
Yeah. I was just to give you an idea.
And of the 2 production companies that I pointed out that are most often up here in Squamish, Means of Production and TV Group, they're both non-unionized houses, correct me if I'm wrong.
Front Street is
Not
mostly.
no, the Means of Production and TV Group.
You are, yes, you are right with an asterisk.
Okay, maybe I'll stop then.
So what can happen though, I mean, that's a really good point, though. There's a lot of production, especially commercials, don't use cast and crew and EP,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah.
And not all shows have to. This is just that's our sources of information. In regards to unionize, a lot of these shows can go no union, partially union, or full union. So a lot of the mid-range shows will go Directors Guild and UBCP. So just the assistant directors, locations people, and the actors are unionized, and everybody else will be. But the labor standards for how they're treated is governed by competition as well as by the provincial labor codes.
One clarification though, the 2,500,000 is money spent in Squamish? Or that's just for the labor costs of the 140?
No.
Of the 149 people identified by those two payroll companies,
No.
that's the total amount that they were paid in salary
Gotcha.
in 2015.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I may, you also had a figure in here, Devin, that said it was about 1.3 million in trickle down from production spent in town. And that may or may not include what these people are spending. Moreover, it's sort of what the production is laying out as far as catering, buying groceries from the grocery store, gas for the trucks and the crew, those type of things.
Correct.
Clothing if it's needed by wardrobe at the last minute, whatever those expenditures may be.
Yes, it would be safe to assume that there's very little overlap between the two numbers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say. Thank you.
Is this the time, you're done your presentation?
I think he's got a few more, but I'm sure he's going to be
Well,
fast.
Yes, I'll be fast. That's right.
Yeah, we'll let you finish.
So just an example, the types of productions that come into town that each of the communities is in effect competing for to get some of their dollars would be a show like Deadpool that spent $40 million during their 58 days filming in BC. Deadpool 2 is confirmed to come to BC.
Not Squamish.
To BC.
That we know.
That we know, right?
We'll work on it.
Right. I mean, okay, now, with regards to best practices,
Yeah, I think let's speak to greening, just because I think there's a compelling story here, especially given our local citizen, Zena Harris, and her commitment to greening of the industry. I will provide council the link to the video, and you guys can watch that at your leisure another time.
okay, there's lots of resources available on the website for creativebc.com. Zena is kind of the person that is rolling out Real Green for the film industry. She's a resident. So we have best practices that were developed again as a beginning from the practice in New Zealand, as well as Warner Brothers initiated a standard a number of years ago, and over the past 10 years we have the best practices laid out for every show and then every department thereafter. So, and for instance, one of the most important things that Zena would actually remind everybody to start off with is that being green is not a, hey, we've opened up our office, we're on our show, oh geez, I guess we should recycle. That's important, of course, but you need to start way before. You need to plan on what materials are you going to use, what materials you're going to use to build your sets. And that's kind of what we're trying to focus on now, is getting the producers involved right from the beginning.
Yeah, so I'll summarize it from, there's the production aspect, and what we met on at the Vancouver Film Festival in December was how we as a municipality can support the Real Green practices, either through policy or guidelines, and how we can support the Real Green efforts while not deterring or not creating barriers, additional barriers to the industry. So we can probably move on.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then other than that, we have a code of conduct that we encourage shows to follow. when filming in communities. And that, again, is available on our website. General courtesies with regards to how crew behaves in various communities that we visit, and how we park and that kind of thing.
And as a municipality, we appreciate this code of conduct. It gives us a benchmark to measure the industry against. It also shows affected locations, what they can expect, and has generally helped us as a municipality support both the industry and businesses. Say Libby? Wonderful, that's great. How am I doing for time here?
Good, you still have 10 more?
Great.
You need 10 more?
So I'm going to take over and drive here.
Thank you, by the way, for that excellent presentation. Cool.
So I'm going to go through some of the more compelling stats coming out of the film department in 2016. I provided council with a more extensive breakdown of statistics that I'm going to show here today. But if you have any questions pertaining to anything, please jump in. Before we do that, I'll just throw up the filming fees in the fees and charges bylaw to give a quick rundown of what we charge for our services. You see, we've got the application fee, the daily filming fee, and then into the actual services where street use, district property, and so on. District liaison is the hourly wage associated with the employee that would be overseeing. And then by the numbers, this was provided to council. There's a lot going on this page. I acknowledge that, but it also is to act as kind of a dashboard and a one-stop shop for everyone to see the information. Yeah, please.
Thanks. I'm always curious as to how we unboxing actually create a total spending Squamish, because what businesses downtown notice is that the productions usually lease a space and don't leave the space. They're catered by outside caterers, and the outside spend is asked by the films that are filming here, which is incredibly biased. Films want to say that they're spending money in a community, so if you ask them, they're going to say, oh, we're buying everything locally, but generally the caterings, you know, I live and work downtown. I know the catering companies, they're not local catering companies. So when people come up with everything and they generally don't need a lot, is that basically hotel stays, or how is that measured besides asking the people that are filming here?
So over the last number of years, it's been, I think this is not a new dialogue. And so over the years we have been, we've been changing the way we look at and report the direct spend. So I'm going to flip ahead to this. In previous years, we had been using an economic ratio, and that didn't feel right. And then we moved to a model that Langley uses, where they categorize them and assign just a flat rate. So if you're a commercial, you're a feature, you're a major TV. So a commercial would get a blanket economic daily impact of, say, 10 grand. And so that provided, that also didn't totally feel accurate as well. And so what we moved to in late 2015 and 2016 was the application and the exit survey requires that we ask that question and we collect the data and track the data. So we look at and we take the numbers that the crews have reported. So we're now kind of on our third way of looking at this. And so I'm open to council's feedback in terms of if this is the direction that they like and how they feel about the numbers, the integrity of the numbers.
Explain a little bit more about what the survey looks like. So
Yeah.
we ask very specific questions. Where did you spend your money? How much did you spend? How many people? And it's a requirement of every production. They don't get their deposit back until they've completed the survey to Devon's satisfaction. So they have to indicate how and where. And so not just the catering, which may come up from Vancouver, it's what are your local spends? Where did you spend your money? How much did you spend? How many days were you here? All the statistics that go into compiling those numbers. And then they don't get their deposit back until they've provided.
Do they have to provide, just follow up on that? Do they have to provide any proof of expenditures, or they just
No.
make up numbers and put it on a sheet and that's?
Well, we,
As a Department of One,
I know, but
there's a reality to the audit that I can
that's right.
But
participate.
they have the faculty to actually audit themselves for local spending, and it would benefit them to actually provide accurate, an accurate assessment, because it'd be good to know because I know that the BIA and the businesses downtown feel shut down, not opened up by film when they come into town. They're taking up the parking, and we only charge $50 a day for parking. And they block off the entrances for the use of the facilities. I know Lucas Steve is incredibly angry because people couldn't get into his store and they were not paying for anything, and they lose business because when this film comes into town, they take up facilities.
So I'll just clarify a few things. The rate for parking is $50 a day for 50 meters. And so,
They'll rent the
and
private parking lots.
yeah, and they also rent the private parking lots. The location managers that I'm speaking to in dealing with downtown, that isn't indicative of all the feedback that I'm hearing back from the community, specific to downtown. Yeah, and so when I am in touch with those businesses that are having less than positive experiences, I encourage them to be in touch with me prior, as soon as they get the notification letter. I'm able to affect change prior to the production rolling into town. And I would say 99% of the location managers that I work with are on it, willing, engaged, and happy to affect the change that the businesses are needing to see.
Thank you.
Karen?
Yeah, so I'm just, to build on Councillor Chappelle's point, do we partner with the BIA or the Chamber to somehow highlight the companies locally that could support productions in terms of catering? And so, because I'm sure that people it's easy because they've worked with companies before, so they hire the same catering company over and over again. At the same time, do we have a role in highlighting some of our local services that could help so that people don't have to bring everything up from the city?
Yeah, there is a resource sheet that we call it the Squamish Film Collective, and it's actually headed up by Glenn Campbell, who I meant to acknowledge prior to starting my presentation. My apologies.
And who will be speaking next then?
And full disclosure, it does need to be updated and hasn't been in a couple of years, but it's a list that is comprised of resources in Squamish, so not just human resources, but also can be, carnies, waste management, or construction materials, things like that.
Thanks.
Glenn?
Well, I can speak to that. One thing you need to really understand is that the film industry is a business. It's a movable feast. And that all of the entities that get involved with the production of materials and services sign contracts. So caterers sign contracts. They sign contracts for the run of the show. So it's not that anybody can have a jurisdiction that says that you must utilize caterers within our town. If you do that, you can kiss your $1,377,000 goodbye. I would like to recognize Zina Harris. The story goes a little deeper than that, and I think that you should all recognize the incredible creativity in this town. Zina Harris's project, Green Spark Group, which you can look up, actually started at a get-together that Inside Edge had at the Eagle Eye Theatre, and it was a mock Dragon's Den. So we were divided into groups, we didn't know each other at all, and we were to come up with a quick business idea. Well, lo and behold, if Aza O'Leary, who's a production manager, Zina Harris and myself and a couple other people, were assigned a group. What did we have in common? We came up with more green initiative for the film industry. Zina, having her master's degree from Harvard in sustainable management, took that idea and ran with it and was a huge part of the Vancouver Film Festival this year. We really have to thank Zina Harris. She's put Squamish on the map in a very different light, so I think we should really work on that as well. I have a couple of questions, and thank you for bringing up. I am actually meeting with Jennifer Thatcher later, because we're going to do a shout out again. We did this shout out in 2013 for the Squamish Film Collective, asking for local people who live here and work in the film industry. It's great to see your 149 people, because I figured that it had at least tripled, so I'm sure we've got even more than that. The Inza's commercials and whatnot do not work into the payroll systems. Yes, we need to do a business piece. I will note that years ago, I don't know if you were here then, Robin, but when a lot of communities had film offices, Squamish did put together a business magazine, back then when it was all print, and it was things like dry cleaners, gas stations, the businesses thing. That could be done, that could be done again. But I think that marketing is a big thing that's coming up, and Devin and I have touched on this a wee bit. I don't know, you went to the Vancouver Film Festival, I went to the Whistler Film Festival, and I thought, man, Squamish just needs to have a presence at the Whistler Film Festival, because I was very surprised at the international caliber of people that were showing up at that film festival, and I think that a presence there would be an excellent, excellent opportunity.
But the appropriate trade shows and workshops that are offered at the Vancouver Film Festival, not watching the films. Not watching the
Yeah,
films.
exactly.
We get
You
it.
attended as an industry partner, as did I. It wasn't about going and watching films. It wasn't
No.
entertainment, it was business.
Thanks for the clarity.
Yeah. Industry magazines online, like Kemp or whatever it's called now, or do we have a presence in that? And then I was curious too. I thought it was really great that Squamish Emergency Services was here, because I'm curious how the film industry is letting or how our office is letting the film industry people who come here know about our emergency services, our emergency program, just in case they are tourists in our town. So I think that's a link that we should really cover. And in wrapping it up, I just want to say congratulations to District of Squamish for taking this ball and running with it, because I think the numbers are there, and I think it's going to be beneficial to everyone. So congrats, everybody.
And I think we've been fortunate to have someone like Devin who's been taking that ball and running hard with it, and really expanding the way we do business and forward thinking on all of those. And working with Creative BC, who I have to say, I've worked with you guys on several occasions before you were the Film Commission and as Creative BC. Your reputation is stellar, and that goes, I would say that goes across North America and probably around the world. I know producers from LA and stuff that always have the highest praise for our crew and our cast and how we do business in BC. So kudos to all of you for the work that you guys do. I have a couple more and I want to keep on point. Do you have any more slides you'd like to show first, and then we can do questions at the end? Let's finish up your presentation.
I'm gonna zip through
Yeah.
the rest of the
We'll let
metrics.
you get
Just
that
here's the V8B postal code earnings by year. So going back to 2009, You obviously see some great progression here. And then this was the revenue breakdown that you were provided in your package as well. So if anyone has any specific questions on that. I would say that the 2017 revenue forecast of $25,000 is conservative. It was put in obviously in September, October when the budget process was being initiated. I'm confident we'll hit that number. Yeah, that will exceed it, but I would like it to remain there. Before we move on to the fun stuff, policy amendments, if there's any other questions.
Okay, we got a couple.
Yeah.
Sue, I want from Doug first, sorry.
Could you go back about 2 or 3 slides to the one, that one? And I was just trying to understand those 2 that are highlighted in orange, the average spend per day in Squamish and the average spend per day of filming. So if we look at just the first quarter numbers of $4,079, is that the total of all the productions, or is that one production per day?
It is the mean of the numbers provided to us by the 39. It's 39 pieces of data provided to us between the exit survey and the application, telling us what their average spend was in Squamish.
But that would be a cumulative number. That's the total, it's the mean, but it's the mean of all of them spending that day, or is it, that's not one unit, one production spending $4,000 per day.
Correct.
So that's kind of the total, because the numbers vary.
Yes.
$25,000 in the
Wildly.
fourth quarter, obviously
Yes.
more filming activity, so that's the collective number.
Yes.
And then the second one, the average spend per day of filming. So once again, if you look at the first quarter, the number is $9,517. So is that film spent everywhere, or is that just spent in Squamish, or?
Just in Squamish, and that is what this story tells me, is that in the fourth quarter we had a major production who had a higher daily spend than we had in the rest of the previous quarters. That we had a major feature in town, and their spend per day of prep which you can interpret as in Squamish versus actual production day being when they're actually filming.
That was my next question. So that between the 2 columns,
Yes,
one is a filming day, the one on the right.
correct.
And the other is a non-filming day, just a setup or takedown day. or
Correct.
something like
Prep productions. Yeah.
that. Got it. Thank you.
Sue?
Thanks. I have a few jobs. I worked in the industry. I had a card with Local 58 for 20 years. So it was, it used to be shiny for me, but as a taxpayer, the shine, when I'm in this seat, I worry more about how we incentivize one business over another, how we look at how much our taxpayer has to pick up the bill for films being in and all the aggravations of that. So we still don't cover the position, which is what I wanted to see with our fees. And I was hoping that, that the position would cover itself with our I think $250 for a permit is extremely low still. I'd like to see our permit fees go up a little bit. I think that this is a massive American industry that wouldn't mind paying $500 a day for a permit if they were in town and if it was a major production. And maybe we vary the costs and differentiate between commercial and a feature. That there is a different cost if it's a feature film as opposed to a non-unionized private film that's somebody trying to get off the ground, just like we incentivize an entrepreneur. I was interested in what we use for landfill, and Zena Harris, I totally agree. She's done absolutely amazing work with the film industry. It is not a green industry. It was not a green industry, and I'm glad to see it moving towards being a green industry with a local Squamish person helping it move in that direction. So I'm interested in how much they actually put into our landfill, or if we're keeping track of how much they're putting in our landfill, because it is quite an intensive garbage creating industry. if that garbage, you know, if catering and everything else all goes into our local garbage, how is that garbage managed? And yeah, the tax incentives have always, you know, Lionsgate is an American company, it's not a Canadian company. A lot of places, American companies have offices here, but they are American. And the tax incentives, hey?
Do you know the name Frank Grustra?
Yes. You know, and I know, I've known accountants in the industry, and I know labor practices and importing labor and how they get, you know, how it's different for importing labor when they're supposed to be using Canadian labor, and a lot of times they go around a lot of the industry standards to go to actually hire outside. So there's still a lot of things that need to be worked on. That's not our local problem. I appreciate your position. If we didn't have your position, that would be a disaster. And you do so much work that I appreciate. The interface is amazing. So I certainly appreciate all the work you do. I just want to make sure that that our fees are fair to our taxpayer, and we're not supporting. You know, our hotels get work, that's awesome, but our local businesses not so much. And there are definitely a few businesses that are benefiting, like the Ledge. I see that being used a lot for cruise, and that's awesome, and renting parking lots. But it seems like the same businesses are being utilized and other businesses are being left out. And I also appreciate the getting in touch. That's a message that I can take to the public, because that's huge.
So I'm going to turn the clock back a year when we had a similar discussion. So you'll remember that our goal is to have our fees cover the position, but don't forget it's film and events. So you're just seeing the film side of things, right? And that we were, you know, going to be re-examining what the fees were once we had a year to benchmark it against, and then, you know, tweak to right size. So you're 100% right, but it's a work in progress.
Perfect.
So, yeah, when we introduced the fees
Thank you,
last year, that is absolutely the goal.
Excellent,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I know we're not going to get there right away.
But
It's going to be,
we wanted to
a
try and
work
get through
process.
over 2 years.
Doug, quickly, and then we're gonna get to our recommendations.
And just to clarify, am I correct in saying that we are legislatively required when we charge fees to cover costs? We can't sort of turn it into a cash grab, it's not a tax. We went through this with the festival,
That's right.
the rental of lands for the festival.
That's right, we're not supposed to
Make a profit.
make a profit on our administrative services, but what we want to look at is this an appropriate amount? Because we were, you know, taking our fees based on average amount of time per file. Now we know, because we're tracking it better, is that actually correct? Are there things that we're missing? And are there charges that we are allowed to implement? For example, can we put a surcharge for landfilling, or for not following certain best practices? You know, we know that you know, the film production companies they don't, once we say to them that there's going to be a surcharge for something, for example, wildlife attractants. As soon as we went out and started hitting them hard when they weren't managing their attractants, they fell into line right away. Like, that was it, because they wanted to be good corporate citizens while they're here. So there are other opportunities for fees or for charges that we're always trying to pick up on once we know we're missing them. You know, sometimes we're kind of close to the trees and we don't see them until somebody points them out.
That's just really just
But,
fine tuning our costs,
yeah.
understanding our costs.
That's right.
Small one from Ted.
It's good work, I think, so all sounds good. My only concern is the store owners, and I'd like to hear that you're trying to work with them, but a lot of people on Cleveland, the store owners complain about, you know, as long as you're working to make that better, that's great.
Encourage them to speak to
Yeah.
Devin or myself. And
You don't know if you don't hear about it.
that's right, when we're not here, so we need to.
Well, we should reach out.
Well, and Devin does go to the BIA.
I do
Once a year?
walks.
Yeah.
There are developing opinions, that there are store owners that are for, it runs a gamut. Opinions change versus time of year, time of day, and we all take that into consideration when issuing a permit to a production, that the requirements that we impose on them match the impact that the community will be experiencing, specifically in the downtown.
Karen, one?
Quickly, those notification letters that businesses get, they
Yes.
come from the production company?
Correct. I
Is your
approve
name
them.
on them?
My name is on them.
Okay.
My name is on them and my telephone number is on them, and I approve those letters.
Cool, thanks.
Before I get to the recommendations here, I just have one question. I'm in Los Angeles producer, say. I've never been here before. I want to look through your World of Looks, your location book for Squamish. Are we accurately represented here? Would you say, in your estimation?
Yes, absolutely. So there's two different aspects to the database. One is what we call the gallery, so you can just go online. And the other is we have a confidential database. There's a lot of personal information about, for instance, your home, if you're in it. Yeah, so we don't give that out to just anybody. So what you would do is you would send me your script. I do a breakdown, and then I send you a package that gives you the looks. But we have some we could use more houses.
Okay.
And I,
And that's
Sean's being very nice. I have received feedback in late 2016 from Creative BC saying that we could refresh our look and bump it up a little bit. So part of the marketing initiatives for 2017 will be working with Creative BC to get updated photos. As well, our communications department here at the district will be issuing a press release on a lot of this information you see, and part of that press release will include a push for, or an invitation for homeowners to submit their property into the Creative BC database.
It's
Is that
very
the first
simple.
one?
You just go to the web page.
It's very simple,
You
yeah.
just click, you go to a form, you kind of do a digital signature, and you upload the photos yourself.
Yeah.
And that's how you get into the library.
Yeah, because locations, I think, is one of the first things that people are ever going to see. If they've never been to a place before, one of those producers are going to look at that right away. You know, what kind of place in Canada or BC matches my thought for how the script is going to go, and so you want to be accurately represented.
And just further to that, we received a grant in 2012, 2013 project and from Creative BC, and we did,
Thank you.
and the province, and we did a whole refresh of the database. So what the feedback was from Creative BC at that time, you know, they don't want pretty pictures of Squamish. They want the picture of the back alley with the dirty staircase, or it's different kinds of locations. So we put out a call to artists, and we had a photographer come do all the picture refresh, and it was a big year-long project. So.
Sure.
And you have lots of beautiful pictures of the chief.
Yes, we don't need any more pictures of the chief.
Okay, so our recommendations are that the District of Squamish rescind the policy 012-003 dated January 15th, 2002, the Dream Park donation, and the council rescind policy A01B-02, filming within Smoke Bluffs Park, and further that council approve the amendments to the filming policy A01C-01.
Chair, I'd also like to, in speaking further with finance for the last couple of days, they would like to make an adjustment to procedure 5.4's language,
Okay.
which would change the reading to be community donations from film productions for filming at Smoke Bluff are directed into the maintenance operation budget for future improvement. That better aligns with procedurally and administratively, that better aligns with the practice that's in existence right now.
And you need a motion for this?
I do.
Yes. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Chappelle. All in favor? Motion carries. Is there anything else? One quick.
Yeah, parking fees.
Yes.
Is that something that can be, if there was anything that I thought was undercharged, parking like $50 a day for a parking spot for all day, inconvenience of the downtown, only in the downtown core where there is no parking. Once we have a centralized parking lot, that would be fine, but when you're taking up the parking right out front, maybe those parking fees can be adjusted to reflect the actual, yeah. And that'd be awesome.
Well, thanks very much for a really great and informative presentation from both of you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate your time. Thank you again. Thanks, Devin.
Thank you,
for all your
everyone.
work. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 3, draft goods and services agreement advertising bus shelters. Ms. Herford.
Good morning, everybody.
Greetings.
So I'm Beth Herford, Sustainability Coordinator at the Sturgis Squamish, and today we're here for a brief presentation, hopefully, regarding the advertising bus shelters agreement. The proponents, or actually, sorry, the contractors, have proposed a few amendments to the agreement, so I'd like to run through them and seek approval from council. So just a quick background, Actuate Communications were 2 local individuals that were hoping to provide bus shelters with advertisements in District of Squamish. They originally came to present to council in April of 2015. There was a process following that took quite some time, and in September 20th, 2016, at the special business meeting, the motions were carried for council to provide input, in addition to council authorizing the mayor and corporate officer to execute the agreement substantially in the form attached, and for the report from Community Planning and Infrastructure with minor amendments as approved by the CAO. So staff made those changes, and the agreement was ultimately executed on January 4th of this year, 2017. Since that point, the contractors, Actuate Communications, have proposed 2 amendments to that agreement. One regarding the physical shelters themselves, as they would now wish to go with a new supplier, in addition to a separate advertising style for our pre-existing transit shelters. In addition to that, staff have come across 2 problematic locations in regards to property issues, so we seek some flexibility with the placement of those shelters. You can see here the shelters on the right are the original, so they're very, very similar in design, just different colors, and we have requested that they paint the new shelter design the same color. The one item that I would say is a benefit to the new design is a more local supplier, in addition to a less kind of obtrusive solar panel installation. The original design had a separate solar panel provider, and they were quite noticeable and therefore more susceptible to vandalism. So the newer design does provide that benefit. However, the contractors have realized that costs are significantly higher for the new shelter designs and have requested smaller shelters at 12 of the locations. 3 of the busiest locations would remain of similar size to the original proposal.
Do we have
Sorry.
one question? Do we have a list of those locations that they wanted to go smaller on, so we can see that?
Sorry, I do have the list. I didn't bring it here today. I
Send that out
apologize.
to us, would be great. Just for-
Submission.
What was it? Sorry. I missed it.
I believe it was in the email that was in the amendment,
I'm sorry.
I think,
My bad.
attachment. Okay, sorry. So I do have the information.
And staff have reviewed the list and agreed with the contractor that the 3 locations are very high use and need the larger ones. The other ones are lower use and probably the larger size would be overkill.
In addition, yeah, sorry. So in addition, Actuate Communications has proposed a different type of advertising style on our pre-existing shelters. These would be more of a vinyl wrap style. They would not be lit. The reason that this was proposed is that the advertising panels they had originally planned to use are large and would ultimately require the concrete base be altered on our pre-existing shelters. So the budget implications are actually more revenue implications for the district. The responsibilities of the contractor in the district remain the same. The reduced potential revenue would be only at the 5 pre-existing shelters, so it's a total of 10 panels, 2 at each shelter. It's a decrease compared to the district share of revenues compared to what was originally proposed, in that the new vinyl wrap is $350 a month is what they are renting that advertising space at, versus the $500 originally proposed. And these new advertising shelters will continue to provide the same the revenue share remains the same, but because we would be receiving less because they would be sold at a lower rate, the revenues are slightly adjust. So for the 15 locations, the 2 that are circled here, you can see one that lands in front of Shannon Estates on Government Road, in addition to one that lands in front of Howe Sound Secondary near Carson Place, have very tight property lines, and our right-of-way doesn't quite allow for them within district, on district property. So we seek some flexibility in those locations. We do have some ideas, but we haven't come down to exact locations for those yet. We will still continue we had originally 20 locations we had discussed with the proponents, so that were all in high demand after we had talked to the transit operators, so we would still be using the locations that were originally discussed. We had just narrowed them down to 15.
More questions, Sue?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I've got questions.
Perfect. The Howe Sound in front of the schools there, it's desperate for shelter. I mean, those are packed in the morning, and there's like 15 kids standing in the pouring rain, and little kids outside of the elementary school. Is there no way to work with the school district that we can actually,
Yeah, so the 2 that are bordering Squamish Elementary, so more at the south, are in dire need of shelters, because that area is up for redevelopment, likely in the near future, or could be. We have spoken during our pre-application process about having them provide shelters on those sites. Right now, if we were to provide these shelters, we would ultimately be responsible for taking them away during that construction period and putting them back at the end. So those areas are certainly in need, but there are other restrictions, and I think that's a pump station, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, it's really close, and operations is a little nervous about proximity. There's hydrants, and there are a few other factors in that particular area that make it really challenging for us. But we could consider them in more detail. No, sorry, those are the Squamish Elementary. The one at Howe Sound that is right at the covered area by the school is where we propose to put the shelter. To put advertising on school property, I think would require quite a bit of conversation with the school district, that we haven't necessarily wanted to pursue that, because we're eager to get these shelters in before the rain season starts again. So it really is kind of more a time restriction, and it may not even be allowed according to their rules, but I'm really not sure, because we haven't started that process yet.
the private property, can I just follow up with that? The private property would mean kids crossing the road to get to the shelter, so it wouldn't be a natural appropriate place because of the road access there. And so it would, instead of actually coming out, we should look at putting the bus shelter where they don't have to integrate with traffic in and out.
Are you discussing the
private property that's going to be redeveloped there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it may actually need to not go on the private property, so we should look at, you know, if there's going to be road issues, having kids cross the road and cross over parking lots to get to a bus shelter isn't appropriate, so maybe moving it further away and onto our property.
Yeah, it's certainly an area that presents a lot of different challenges with the CN and the school and traffic and lots going on there. So, but like you said, a lot of volume when it comes to transit ridership there. So definitely an area we would like to accommodate them better.
Good.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's nice to see this coming forward. I like the bus shelters. And did you say it was a local supplier now?
They are, so the contractors are local and the supplier is more local than the other suppliers.
Well, that's really good. That's a win. And I assume when they buy these bus shelters, they're buying bulk.
Yes.
I just wondered if we could arm wrestle that price in case we want to put in some bus shelters. You know, like if we want to buy 5 bus shelters.
But, Through the chair.
Please.
I believe they're a North Van contractor, is that right? In Metro Vancouver area, anyway. We are putting in our own bus shelters. And
Same design?
And the ones that we're putting in are a different, they're a timber frame design. They're actually constructed within Squamish. They're a little bit more expensive than these ones, and so the contractors have elected to go with a different company. But I think council was pretty happy with the design of the ones that we're installing when we brought them here last.
Happy, but they're way too expensive. And so, do you know the price of the ones that these people are supplying?
Don't off the top of my head, no.
They're probably in this $7,000 to $10,000 range instead of the $30,000 range. We had a discussion the other night, but council wasn't supportive of a thrifty bus shelter. I think these ones are thrifty bus shelters. And if we can, because we're allowing the guy to set up here, I don't know, I mean, if we could just get the option to buy a few, 4 locations where we might get them. I mean, I just think it's a good idea. I can't see us building the stone base, high lit, glass, fancy roofed bus shelters on the end of streets where there's not that many people. We need a design the council can accept for a bus shelter that's not too expensive.
That's certainly something we can explore and come back.
Just one more thing. Yeah, and then the bus shelter proposed across the street from the school, I think that's really important to put that one in there. I know Susan's saying kids, but there's a crosswalk, a lit crosswalk right at the school, and the kids all filter across there anyway. And if that development's going in there, let's make sure we
Yeah.
get one there. So I think anytime development goes in, we should get bus shelters.
Linda?
Just for clarity through the chair, the timber frame bus shelters that have already been included from the budget and council point of view are currently being built. So in terms of staff exploring using similar format as the ones this proponent is using would be for future years and future bus shelters. So that project is already well underway.
Yeah, and that was for 4 or 5 bus shelters. Do I have to make a motion to get staff to look at some less expensive ones? I mean, I really just feel, the one like downtown is $35,000. I mean, we need those little bus shelters out in rural areas where you see people put 3 lawn chairs.
But correct me if I'm wrong, would that not require a separate year's, but that would be a budgetary item for next year, not for this year?
Yes.
We've already moved that.
Can we put that in?
I'm sure we could bring it up, but Chris, please.
Through the chair, I think we're locked for this year. I think that we can perhaps explore for the 2018 budget year having a 2-tier system. And we don't have the numbers in front of us. I don't think we're ready to talk about how much savings we would get. But certainly it might make sense to have our sort of signature wooden shelters in visible areas and in other areas where we might be able to serve the public the same way with the thriftier shelters. Maybe do that, but that would be for the 2018 budget year.
Thanks, you could bring something back to us for that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Jason?
Okay, I'm gonna offer a countering perspective. I'm disappointed with the design. It didn't change very much, and I thought we provided a significant amount of feedback around that issue. I'm also questioning the durability of the materials. I mean, you get what you pay for, and is it going to be the case that for sure these may be cheaper upfront, but maybe they're going to last 1/3 of the time, and they're going to look ugly for half the time and require repairs and things like that. So, I appreciate the applicant's desire to keep costs down, but I also concerned, look at, we're spending all this money on our wayfinding and branding. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on signs, and now we're gonna have bus shelters that are all different kinds and advertising, and I think it's a matter of our priorities, and I would venture to say that actually these 20 projects are in very visible locations. This is why they were chosen. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, and I wouldn't want to prevent us from having bus shelters just for a design sake at this point, but I mean, I don't know. I thought at least, because when I saw the bus shelters that we built very recently, I actually thought it was this part of this project, and I said, oh, I'm really impressed with that design, because I think it fits with our sort of aesthetic, and these are key pieces in the public realm, right? So, you know, I don't think it's an issue that we can totally resolve, but I just want to put that out there. And, you know, sometimes it is a matter of you pay a little bit more up front, but you get higher quality and more durability, and maybe something that, you know, also looks a little bit nicer and functions better.
Thank you. Chris?
I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I think, I just want to clarify though that this amendment, I think the look and the character are fairly similar. The bus shelter materials are, if anything, better. There was some concern that with the original vendor, the costs had suddenly ballooned. There was some concern about longevity of the supply. The new supplier is the supplier for much of the Lower Mainland, and so spare parts and materials will be easier to come by. And the solar panel design is a lot less ugly, as well as being, you know, when I think it was less intrusive was the word that Beth used. But I think the look is actually a little bit better. They ended up being more expensive than the original quote on the other ones. And so that's the reason for asking in the less trafficked areas to come down in size a little bit. Actually brings the cost to the contractor down to where it originally was, and makes their models still work. So I wouldn't want to characterize this as they're trying to cheap out on us. I think we're actually getting better shelters, but smaller in certain areas, and that's the balance we're trying to strike.
Add to that, yeah, so just through you, Chair. In addition, previously when this was brought forward, we did have quite a lengthy discussion around character and branding, and the direction from council was to continue to pursue this design, so that's why we're here.
Thanks. Karen?
What's the size of our standard bus stop that we built?
The size of our standard bus stop is the size that they're proposing here for their smaller. I think it's slightly off, but they're very similar in size.
So we built like 5 by 8.
Yeah.
And have you looked at all the locations in terms of expected growth? Like, I know there's a smaller one positioned for outside Brackendale Elementary. But as we increase bus service, it might be that a school is actually not where you want to go smaller, but bigger, or say with bigger size. So that was the only one that outside of school where do we really want a smaller size there? Right. We're going to be increasing service on our main routes over time. So that was the one that stood out to me, but as potentially needing to stay at 6 by 12.
Yeah.
And I know they've proposed another one in front of Mampcombe Elementary as well. Now that's much more of a walking school. Yeah. So that one didn't really stand out, but because so many kids are going up to Don Ross as well, I just thought the bus stop up there might need to be larger.
Don, and the location in front of Don Ross is one that we are considering as an additional location for a shelter in lieu of the location in front of Shannon Estates.
Okay. Yeah, so just, I won't dictate that, but let's keep that in mind.
Consideration, okay.
Thank you, and Sue, and then in the interest of our two department heads that are waiting to speak and follow up, we'll move on.
Are the solar panels for lighting the shelter and the?
They're to light the panel, and the panel is believed to be bright enough to light the shelter.
So is that something that's been tested in North Vancouver, or does the panel actually light up the shelter adequately enough?
It does.
I have one quick question for you. On Government, right in front of the Breeze,
yes,
there's a stop there for school buses, and I'm seeing a lot of kids there. In that build for that development for the Breeze, is there also proposed the bus shelter? I can't remember. Refresh my memory. Do you remember, Chris?
Maybe I might be able to shed some
Please
light on
go
that. The bus stop that is on the north side of Government Road, ultimately in front of the Breeze and the Dehu property, has been reconfigured for a proper bus pullout, but there is not space for shelter within the road right of way in that location. So it's one of the areas where we can't quite fit everything in, and if we have parking in a bike lane and sidewalk, we don't have space for a shelter. Across the street, on the south side, there is a stop there, and that is another location that we're considering as an alternate to the locations that are within this agreement for one of these.
Yeah, in front of the Breeze, I'm a bit concerned about, because there's a lot of kids that congregate there, and as that development comes in and further development in the north yards, you're gonna see a lot of kids on that spot, and when the weather's lousy, they're out there and they're waiting to get on a school bus, and they're arriving at school sopping wet. I mean, obviously you can't make a shuttle that's gonna accommodate 70 kids, but at the same time, it'd be nice to have something on that location, because right now the development's ongoing, but they're standing out in the street and in the ditches and all of that stuff, so it's a bit of a
I think,
breakfast
yeah.
in there.
I mean, I think the conversation is certainly, showing us some clarity that shelters are very much required in many parts of the community, and we need to take some creative approaches to providing them, because we are coming up against quite a few challenges with our road right-of-ways and underground infrastructure.
And thank you for facing down those challenges with a steely eye. One quick one.
Yeah, just on that, you mentioned parking there. So if it was just bike lane and Government Road, would there be enough room for?
There would be.
Okay, so why are we providing parking on our public streets, and when there's private residences that are supposed to be providing enough parking for their areas? And there should be no reason for parking on Government Road. That is a municipal road. It should be public transit, bike lanes, and active transit. And cars, of course, but.
Yeah.
But,
I think that maybe, I'm not sure, Chris, or maybe even Linda can shed some light on that one, but I think that's going to be a conversation that is more directed to those developments when they're here in front of council.
That is to miss out on a bus shelter and active transportation in the bike lane because we're throwing 3 cars in. Makes no sense to me.
It's certainly an example of give and take on our streets and where we're going to prioritize.
Okay, I see that you have a recommendation here that you'd like to.
Oh, sorry, yep. But now that after discussion, I'll read my recommendation, but maybe we can adjust it just a little bit to reflect what we've discussed here. That council direct staff to amend the bus shelter goods and services agreement with the changes as outlined within the community planning infrastructure report dated February 28th and the attached advertising bus shelter material amendments document. The changes I outlined clearly were for changing some of those locations, but I think maybe if we were just to keep it broad and give staff a little bit of flexibility in those locations so we can work with the schools would be really great. So I'm not sure how we can change that.
Can I see a nod around the table from council? Is that, you're okay with that, everybody? Okay. I think that's.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Do you need a motion for that?
I do.
Okay. You moving that? Seconded by Sue? All in favor? Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And moving on to the Technology Transformation Program, verbal update from the amazing Conrad Group.
All right.
Thanks, Conrad. Make it really exciting.
I'll just need a minute, thank you.
It's not having any IT issues now. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We need to get Kelsey some elevator music to play in these moments. So just type it out into the system.
Okay, so I'm here today. I'm Conrad Cardell. I'm the IT manager. I'm here today to provide an update on the Technology Transformation Program. This is our multi-year initiative to essentially rebuild our systems for the district. And so I'll give you a quick overview of the presentation today. I'm going to review our quick wins from 2016. dive into the financial management project, work that's been completed, go into some of the work streams that are going on now, and then also go into the timeline for the next couple of years. And then I'll discuss some related projects as well that definitely affect the TTP and vice versa. So quick wins in 2016. So we had a number of smaller projects that we absolutely thought needed to happen early on. Generally, they were systems projects that weren't linked to our finance system, didn't need to be integrated. So we were able to tackle those early on and not be as concerned about integrations. So one of those was the emergency mass notification system. That system tool was selected in collaboration with First Nations and the SLRD. It was successfully rolled out, and last I checked we had about 2,000 registered users. We had a lot of help from our emergency coordinator and communications and making sure the word gets out, and that's continuing to happen, and I believe the number of registered users is continuing to go up. The next system was our fleet management system. We absolutely needed something in Public Works for them to be able to manage their fleet. And so again, this is an independent solution. It's currently not going to be connected to our finance system. We implemented a system, went to RFP, implemented, set up the server infrastructure and so on, and also completed the data conversion, data entry. There was a lot of work went into getting the data into that system. We're currently at the stage where we need to make sure staff are well trained, so there's a training session planned in the next few weeks. So the system is up and running, but for it to completely go live, we need to do that training session with them and make sure everybody's comfortable. Fire system, so we went back to the system we had and went back to our vendor and actually were able to negotiate a very good maintenance agreement. The system was very outdated. It's called FDM. It's being used in a lot of fire departments. We managed to get a new maintenance contract and upgrade that system. And it was really a complete rebuild. So we set up a new server for it. We actually have a testing server now as well, which is great for testing new functionality. And so we have the latest version of that system. Fire staff are already familiar with it, but now they have added functionality. They have much better reporting. So we're already seeing some benefits where they're getting the information they need, and they're also having fewer manual steps for some of their processes. Bylaw noticing, so we wanted to make sure we can support the ticketing and dispute process. This was one of those solutions where we needed to customize our current finance system to support that process. So there's some work that had to be done in Maze, but that system is now set up to reflect our current bylaws. And there are plans to hire an adjudication clerk to fully support that dispute screening and notice process. But the system is in place for them to be able to do that. And then community engagement tools, this was the other quick win, and so we did go through a number of tools that we explored in IT together with communications, and we tested those tools as well, and in the end the decision was made not to use the tools just based on the level of public engagement that was going to be used for this budget cycle. However, we are ready to implement for the next budget cycle if that decision is made. So those tools are ready to go. It's relatively quick implementation, actually, relatively quick turnaround, because they are web-based tools and they fit in with our website. Our financial management solution, so this is really the biggest project in the TTP, and it's really that core platform that we absolutely need. So work completed to date. We have agreements signed with our vendors and the implementation team. We've completed the planning phase, so that includes developing schedules, developing charters, related charters and plans. Just to give you an idea, we have a program charter for the TTP program, but then we also have a financial management project charter. We have a sponsor roadmap. We have a change management plan, a communications plan. We have a draft training plan now, and also a benchmarking plan. And all these documents, in some ways link together, and they do come into our project plan as well. And we've also been applying change management. So we've had a change management session for general managers and affected directors, and that was in collaboration with the RMOW. Since they're going through some similar system upgrades, we've been collaborating with them on change management. We also had an introduction for staff as part of that Hardwired for Leadership training series. And so we're able to use our TTP as an example with staff during those sessions. And we have a comprehensive change management plan that's owned by our change management lead. So addressing change management. We're now in the solution design phase of the project. We're actually nearing completion of that phase. So that includes having all our requirements finalized for our core financials. We've got a new chart of accounts, which is a huge step forward. It's something that's been in the plans for a long time. It really made sense to combine that with this project, of course. This is, it'll improve our reporting options and flexibility quite a bit. So it's a big step forward. We've designed our IT server architecture, so actually already set up the architecture for the live system, but there's also going to be a development environment and several test environments. And so we need to carefully manage those environments. There's also a plan around that, and just making sure that the way people have access, the way those environments are used, there's no confusion. We've actually, the implementation team has gone and built a system prototype for us. So this is based on the requirements we gave them. They've now come back with a prototype, and we've been going through sessions with them over the last 5 days. It's pretty cool because now we actually get to see something, and we can play with it and see what the final product may look like for us. So once that prototype is approved, we're then entering the build phase. So pretty exciting. So I'll dive into the work streams here a little bit. So really there are 3 major work streams for the financial management component of the project. And then there is a work stream for development management as well. So our core financials, that's the work stream we're in now. And that's really that core finance piece: general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, chart of accounts. Excuse me. So Unit 4 is the solution there. Thank you. Unit 4 is the solution for that. That is our core finance solution. So Unit 4 Business World, sometimes you'll see UBW, and at times they're also referred to as Aggresso. That used to be the name of the software. The other team we're working with there is Agilix. That's the implementation team for Unit 4. So they're actually our hand-picked consultants. We were able to really get some great people with lots of experience. We feel we're in really good hands with them. And so they are separate from Unit 4. They're a partner, but it's actually a third party that's doing the implementation for us. The other big work stream with Unit 4 is the payroll system. It's its own beast. I mean, it's really it's a big piece of the puzzle, but it is a separate work stream. Currently, even with our current solution, it's a separate add-on, which I won't get into detail, but it's definitely a risk for us currently. And so we'll be very happy to replace that functionality. The third work stream on the finance side is the Tempest solution, and those are the municipal modules. That's really the front-facing piece that around cash and taxes and utilities, permitting, licensing, and that's also where our customer portal will be implemented. So Tempest Development Group is the system vendor and also the implementer there, and they've got years of experience. Tempest is used in a lot of BC municipalities, lots of good references. And so that solution will be integrated tightly with Unit 4, but also our GIS system is going to be integrated there. And the fourth work stream is the development management piece. That is also provided by Tempest. And so we've conducted initial assessments of that functionality. We've been working with engineering and planning, keeping them in the loop. So far, we have not seen any major flags. So the preliminary decision has been made to use that for development management. It makes a lot of sense. We're still doing some final reference checks and also demos with engineering and planning.
So it would be fair to say that you're finding that these independent modules that all work off the main program are all working pretty well together?
Yeah, they've been designed to work together.
Yeah.
And so it makes a lot of sense.
Always, you and I both know that sometimes there's always those little glitches and things that don't quite fit together in the puzzle, but so far none of that.
So far, no flags, and so we've seen the same model implemented at other municipalities, and we're hearing very good things, and we've gone and visited some of those municipalities, and they're quite happy.
I have to say, you seem pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm always happy. Yeah, unless SharePoint, unless something doesn't work. Yes.
You hear the cursing out in the back.
Yeah. So I thought I'd share our updated timeline. Hopefully I can zoom in, but I think it's you can see it. So this is the updated TTP timeline over the next 2 years. A lot of these details were fleshed out in this planning phase for the financial system. And I'm showing the 4 main work streams there. So at the very top, it's the core financials. That next kind of gray-blue bar across is the payroll work stream. And then purple is our Tempest municipal modules. You'll see there's several phases there, and that's mainly because we're dealing with different project managers on the Tempest side, so that it's broken down by phases there. But what you'll see at the far right is the kind of a gradient over to pink is then the development management piece. And so and there's a big piece there too with Tempest where we're putting in the land platform, and that's really the big GIS integration and platform for the rest of the Tempest solution. I think a key thing to see here are the go live dates. They're staggered. So with the core financials, we're able to go live November 1st. Our plan is to go live with payroll January 1st, and then the Tempest financials April 30th. That's a very big date for us because that's actually where we can turn off MACE. So then at that point we've replaced all MACE functionality. And then
at that moment.
Sorry?
There'll be a deep breath at that moment.
Yes, but all of these go lives are big. You know, the development management is a big go live in August because that's really where you see the online portal and functionality for the end user, for the customer. And so we've had to it made a lot of sense to stagger this. We worked very closely with finance and also the CLT, trying to make sure this works with their schedules. Like finance has some very, very busy times and they're, you know, throughout the year. We had to make sure this is going to work for them. And so you can't just go live with everything all at once. And so original plans had those go live dates very close together. We've staggered it out a little bit. So, you know, so the development management portion has been pushed out. You know, originally, the original roadmap from 2 years ago, where we hadn't done all that detailed planning, had that development management piece happening in Q1. We're now in mid-year of 2018. But I think if we want to be successful, if we want to not have any major disasters throughout these implementations, we need to stagger them in this way. And so we've had the experts vet this, and finance is on board as well. Any questions about this this piece?
One for me, anyone else?
So I'll get into some related projects. You know, there's a lot of other work that's happening and a lot of work that went on last year. So digital strategy, as you know, we completed and had it adopted by council last year. There are certainly links to the TTP, and we are working on IT-related items, action items, so things like webcams, working closely with telcos. Those things are happening. I've also recently met with our new EDO, Catherine, and so we were able to go over the strategy, and I've provided her with the background, and will be supporting her as best as I can moving forward. But so there will be that strategy is not sitting on a shelf. We are moving forward with that. The open data portal, so that was presented by Dan in January to council, and so that was actually developed using our GIS data system tools. Quite a few data sets available already, and it is starting to be used by the public and by developers, and Dan will be continuing to work on that this year to further expand it.
And if I may jump again, we are benchmarking that use, right? So we can see right from the start who and why and what they're using.
So there is a benchmarking initiative that's organization-wide that we're kind of in that kickoff phase. There's certainly, I think there's some work still that needs to be done to have a proper benchmarking plan, operational benchmarking plan for this. When I speak about benchmarking related to the TTP, it's more about the project, and so kind of benchmarking how many manual processes did we remove or automate and that type of thing.
Linda?
Through the chair, your question, was it around specifically the open data? So
Yeah,
who's
just-
using it?
Yeah, just to see who's accessing and what they're looking for and why, and maybe how long they're spending on these items, and related searches, all that kind of thing, just to see what the uses are and why and whom.
Was that something that you were able to measure?
There's certainly tools on our website that give us information about how many visitors we've had, how long they stay, what pages they spend most of their time on, and I'm thinking that can be expanded to our open data portal.
That would be sufficient, I would think.
So we could, I can research that.
I know you have a ton on your plate. I'm trying to throw something else on there, but still, it's nice to know.
I'll have a discussion with communications because they generally look at stats for our website, and so maybe that can be expanded.
Thanks.
Big project for us still is the SharePoint Hub document management system. So a ton of work went into continuing to roll out that system to the organization last year. We onboarded recreation, public works, fire, finance, engineering, and planning, and are continuing to do work on the system to make it more user-friendly. We also migrated to a new server environment because of the growth we've been experiencing, so a lot of work on the back end. We've also created a council site, and so the plan is to move closed agendas there. And that's actually, it's already been implemented, but we just need to review it and go live with that. But there may be value in having another session with council so that everybody's comfortable. And if you do have any issues connecting to your SharePoint site or any other technical issues, please come and see us. We're trying to get to a place where we're not sending out massive files and potentially printing giant documents. So eventually I think we'll get there. I think we have the technology to do it. So other SharePoint related activities in 2017, so we do need to onboard those remaining departments. That's really the library, the building department, and economic development. We are also developing a new HR site. They were the original SharePoint pilot group, and a lot has changed since then, so we need to go back to them. We're doing other things to improve usability, and also doing some maintenance work around workflows and security and the records declaration process, because there is a whole records management piece that's happening in the background. We're also planning a new employee intranet portal, so that's really, right now we have a lot of hub department sites to manage, for departments to manage their documents, but what we really need is a central place for all staff to be able to connect, find resources, see what's happening around the organization. So really that intranet portal needs to be rebuilt. The other major project for us is our managed network renewal and also upgrade. So we have a managed network now that's been working well for us, but our agreement is up for renewal and we've absolutely outgrown it. And we're going to continue to outgrow with all these new systems coming online. So there's definitely this year we need to move to a new managed network, and so really moving from 3 to 10 megabyte connections to 50 to 100 megabyte connections to be able to support all of our needs. And so I did want to touch base on Wi-Fi as well, and it's somewhat related to the managed network, but the question came up about our recreation center Wi-Fi. I know there's been some complaints about Wi-Fi there, so just to give a bit of history, we entered into an agreement with Shaw for free Wi-Fi, so they call it the Shaw Go Wi-Fi service. We entered into an agreement in 2013 as a pilot project to see how it would work for us. It was really no cost to the district to build that out. There's a number of routers, a lot of wiring that had to happen, and we don't pay a monthly fee either. And so I understand that non-Shaw customers, they have to jump through a couple of hoops. It's not ideal. So I have done a bit of research, and so I'm just talking about the building now. We could actually put up our own service side by side with the free Shaw service. We are still in agreement there for at least one more year, but we could put up our own service in the meantime without any, we could have our own district splash screen or similar to what we do at the library. Really, it's the same idea. It would require a lot more routers than what we have at the library. It's probably around 6 or 7 routers. And so we could do that ballpark around $8,000 to put that in. That's equipment and labor. And then we're looking at about $150 a month in internet fees. And that's a better connection than they have now. It's still a cable connection, but very high download speeds, which is really what you need for internet access. Alternatively, Shaw can provide a service, full solution, at around $250 a month, where they put up the routers and they do everything. And so I tend to lean towards us managing our own routers. That's the research I have so far. I would recommend the option to build our own and use Shaw as the back-end service provider. It could also be TELUS, so it doesn't have to be Shaw. And so we would continue with the Shaw free service along with our own service, and so people have options then. What I'm not including here is the fields. So Shaw also did put up routers around our fields. That's a much bigger piece, because now it's tougher to you're dealing with weather and climbing up poles, and so I didn't include that in this initial piece. So just for information, we can definitely make a move before our contract is up next year, if we wanted to provide a better experience for users.
Maybe you could bring that back with a bit of an itemized list of how it would break down, and we can have a discussion on it.
I certainly, and I know we're past the budget process, so it was because the question was asked, I did a bit of research, and so maybe it's an option.
Well, on this point, I mean, we are having a sort of a budget discussion this afternoon. It's not quite finalized yet, so the number that you'd be confident with would be about $8,000 if we chose to go ahead with something like that in 2017.
Yes.
Plus 150 a month.
Plus 150 a month for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so it's all good. I mean, I like where we're going. The thing I think is the most important is our website. And I'd like to see resources go there, because we're always trying to get in contact with the community. I use it all the time, but I mean, I'd like to see how we could grow that. And I think that if we do it right, it will be on everybody's, they'll have a link on their computer, because we'll be offering so much local information that that's where they'll go for it. I'm constantly telling people, go to our website, go to our website.
And a lot of work has gone into the website, making it mobile friendly, and there's so much information there. I mean, every district project.
Well, it's a matter of attracting people and putting other stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to the weather there, you can go to,
And we can probably, I can check in with communications. I know they have stats on visitors and how things are changing, so we can definitely provide an update.
Thanks. Linda, and then Linda Conrad needs to finish, and also cognizant that we have our friend from RAC in the back waiting.
Thank you, Chair. When council asks for more on the website, can we get some more specific examples? It's difficult for staff to
Maybe you could
take that in minute.
well, it's just, I watch all the kids on these things all the time. And everybody, when you talk about wiring up around the field, you don't need it, because everybody's using these. But I can't tell you what to put on the website. That's tech people have to tell you. I mean, what would someone from Silicon Valley come up here and say, oh, this is how you liven up your website. Oh, you want to get users to use it and do this. I mean, I don't know what it is. I already have it. I go into it all the time. Of course, I read my agendas and all those things, look at development. But I just think that when we get into kind of political things or issues in the community where this is important for people to pay attention to, and you get 6 people in a meeting, we're not doing a good enough job. That's all.
It's
I don't
important to
think
point out as well, I know we're digressing here,
Yeah.
Chair, but the TTP is the backbone of the organization from a technical point of view, and the website is one small component.
I agree, and we don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now of the website too far, given that we have limited time left. So I'll turn it back to you, Conor, to finish up.
Thank you.
You want?
Completed my update. Open to questions.
Okay. I just want to say thanks first because it's very gratifying to see this all come together with the digital strategy and the TTP finally showing some serious fruits and all the hard work that goes with that, because I know that there has been a lot of work and there's still a lot to be done. But it's really great to see the smile on your face, because I know when things aren't working what you look like. So I'm glad to see that you're in a fairly happy mood right now. So that's great, and thanks to your crew and everybody else for all the hard work. If anyone has any questions, just quickly, we'll move on. Then, thank you, Conor. Appreciate it. And we're turning it over to Tim Hoskins from REC. For a verbal update on the Recreation Department. Thanks, Conor. Cheers. Cheers.
All right.
Very nice.
Did I get caught by the camera?
How about you, Chelsea? She goes there.
Chelsea. He's flapping around in the back there.
I might have to go in front of the podium.
Where would you like it, Kelsey?
Gonna put it back out in the hall again.
That's okay. I just
Okay.
the camera fixed it. We'll catch it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. My name is Tim Hoskin. I'm the Director of Recreation Services. Thank you for the time today. I'd like to give you a quick update on our Senior Center Revitalization Project, and then briefly touch upon the adaptive program. Let's just bring up. So last night we had our open house for the Senior Center Revitalization Project. So I thought I'd share a couple of pictures. It was very well attended. We had well over 60 attendees, and most filled out comments on the draft recommendations. We have just a couple of so just a little bit of a reminder about the project. The Senior Center Revitalization Project was initiated back actually in 2015, where we had discussions with the Senior Center Society on how do we utilize the Senior Center better. The attendance from seniors and from the community is frankly was pretty low, and it's escalating now, but still pretty low for such a fantastic facility that we have. And it was agreed upon that we should strike a project team that included members of the society, but included members throughout the community. Otherwise, we'd be asking the people that are attending, why aren't other people attending? And we wanted to ask the people that aren't coming to the center, what would it take to bring you to the center? So we created a collaboration agreement, and we signed off on this project together. And we embarked on some pretty serious community engagement. We've been following the IAP2, the International Association of Public Participation Values and Principles, and brought a couple of the poster boards that we brought last night. So just to share a few, over 2,100 individual survey comments that the project team has gone through and viewed. We distributed, because we wanted to include the local neighborhood in the conversation, we want to make sure they had a voice. So we took the time and we distributed over 300 paper surveys to the local neighborhood to get them involved. Our project team, which is made up of mostly seniors. We have 13 seniors being 50 years, 55 years and older. Mostly seniors with about two or three, depends on, we didn't ask the women's age, that would be below that age. There's past representation. For example, one of those under 50 works at Hilltop House, and we thought she'd be a valuable asset to the project team. We have had 5 project team meetings, and we are now at the stage where draft recommendations were brought to the open house to get feedback from the community. We've heard feedback from the Senior Center Society. We've heard feedback from other community users. We've had 6 meetings with the Senior Center Society, 17 community group interviews, and over 400 surveys completed. So as you can see, it's pretty robust community engagement. We asked Captain Rockendale to provide some support, and this was to ensure that the process would be deemed unbiased, as well as to help facilitate at times some contentious meetings where not everyone was happy and landing in the same place on what the senior center should look like. She's been a great asset, and I think has really helped guide the process. So the draft recommendations, and I won't go through them all today because the project team will come forward with the recommendations and seek council's guidance and feedback. The project team is going to review the written comments that were received last night and then finalize the comments into a final report for staff review and ultimately council's review. But I thought it would be good to share on the direction so you guys are given a heads up and that there's no surprises. The draft recommendations are more prescriptive than the Parks and Rec Master Plan. The Parks and Rec Master Plan recommended that it be a seniors center, so with the priority for seniors between the hours of 9 to 4. We have recommitted, the project team has recommitted to those values. However, it's been the programming past those hours that has taken a little bit of time and a little bit of work to come up with something that doesn't make everyone happy. Certainly not everyone's happy, but I think most people like the direction that we're going to. And that in the evenings it would be open to the public, but be an adult-oriented facility. So it wouldn't be like Brennan Park where kids are running around. It would be more like a library where there's a code of conduct and playing tag probably isn't the place to do it. But we strongly heard from the community, majority of the community, that we want intergenerational programming that includes children and youth. But they don't want kids there unsupervised. They want it intergenerational type programming, as well as a focus on and culture. That is, those are programs that would be a good fit there. So I would suggest that there's probably about 90% alignment with the Parks and Rec Master Plan, as well as from the Senior Center Society asking what they would like to see. There are still some rubs. Those would be, the biggest one I heard last night was get on with it. Like, this just makes sense, we want this to happen, please make this happen, get to work sort of thing. The other piece is that updating the name. So we strongly heard from the majority of people, including seniors, mostly seniors, that having the name Seniors Center is exclusive, and that if you're a baby boomer, that it's not an appealing place to go to tell your friends, hey, I'm heading off to the Senior Center. I think a good balance is to keep seniors in the title but expand the name to incorporate arts and culture, and to explain that the programming is going to be a focus on arts, culture, and as well as social programming. So I think that gets us most of the way there. That doesn't make everyone happy, so just give me a heads up on that. The other one is on the programs. We've heard that programs to make them adult-oriented is too restrictive. as well as we've heard that it's not restrictive enough. Certainly some would like it to be a senior center, open from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, be restricted to seniors only. And we've certainly heard from a lot of seniors and a lot of the community that no, nobody's going to come here if you just expand what it is now and expand those type of hours later in the evening. So that's about it. Our timeline is we're hoping to get back to you in March and April. I'd love to hear some feedback. I don't need a motion from you, but if we're completely off track, I would love to hear it now. If you think, yeah, Tim, keep following this tangent, that would be good to know. And I'll get back to you with the project team. Well, the project team we're asking to present is my hope. They've done a lot of great work into this, and that they can have a conversation with council with staff support. Any thoughts?
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, it's kind of funny that you said not everybody's happy. I can vouch for that too, because I talked to a lot of those guys there. The things that come up, I mean, I like multi-generational. I really like that because I love to see kids around seniors. I mean, they don't have to be there all the time, but what a great place to take a kid and see some grandpas. I always hear about the liquor, and I've talked to you about that a few times. Whatever we're doing, just make it really clear that we're doing something so that they can have a glass of wine. And like some of the people in the pictures up there were saying to me, look what North Van does. They have glasses of wine down there. How come we don't have glasses of wine with our functions? And then the other one is the little thing that's supposed to come down over the divider between the kitchen and I know a lot of them feel that's a waste of money.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it was just, I'm just commenting. I'm not asking questions.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, generally supportive. I mean, it makes sense to me that from sort of the daytime hours when the other generations are working or otherwise occupied, that's the seniors' time, and then when they are available, when they're leisure time, we do have leisure time in the evenings and so forth, and it is open to the wider community. So I think that is generally where I'm going with that. So I don't have any kind of different directions to suggest to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the engagement's been in-depth. You've heard from a wide range of community members, so who am I to go against what they're saying? I think this is a great compromise, and I think it gets the most out of the asset, because it shouldn't be sitting there idle. And it should be another hub for our community, but it seems to make sense to make it a more adult-focused hub. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the recommendations are.
Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, I got almost 10 years on a senior, and when I look at the place to hear seniors, I think, well, I'm too old to go there. So, yeah, something has to be done with the image. And I just wonder how many people answered this online.
The survey? I don't know offhand. It certainly was a Survey Monkey, but we did provide the opportunity for paper surveys at the senior center as well as staff. Walked around and supported anybody that needed support to fill in a survey directly on an iPad. So
I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah,
because we just talked about that a minute ago. These are the kind of things that we should have some kind of, or you go into the integrated something center, because I never think of going there.
Yeah.
Ever. Maybe for lunch once in a while.
I believe on the survey, it was somewhere around 70% were over 40 or over 50. So it's predominantly the information we have received is the demographic that we want to comment from. Hope that helps.
Sue?
Yeah, everybody's pretty much, I don't need to say anything else. I'm absolutely supportive. I'm glad that you've done so much engagement. It's excellent.
Thank you.
I'm supportive also.
Inclusive programming, adaptive programming. yeah, another program we're extremely excited about and is going very well. And after we had a great conversation with council, we had our community advisory created. We've met twice, we've completed the terms of reference, and made so much progress in the first meeting that we had a majority of the needs assessment done. And we now have a program outlined, and with various costs, revenue versus expense, the level of supports, age groups, that sort of thing. It's essentially going to be a leisure buddy model that many communities have adopted, and that is where it can be done in-house, but the preference being we'd like to work with Whistler Adaptive Sports or something similar, where they train volunteers and then they provide volunteer buddy to accompany a child or somebody that needs support, and that they can participate in the program in an inclusive manner. We think this is a great model and works just about everywhere. However, it was identified by both staff and the community advisory that this might not meet the needs in the aquatic setting. That there's a lot more at stake if somebody doesn't know how to swim, that there's too much onus being placed on a volunteer. May not be the best model or way to go. So there would be greater investment in staff on the aquatic side, on one-on-one lessons until somebody's able to participate in an inclusive manner. Even if they start with lifeguard, with additional lifeguard support, and if they are assessed at a level that they can go into the leisure buddy model, only then would we go there. So most of the investment in the program would be on the aquatic side. Where we're at right now is Whistler Adaptive Sport is taking the scope that we've created and creating a proposal for their board, as well as for the district, for staff review and ultimately council. As they have some other funding available, what does this whole program look like in its entirety? What would the district's contribution be? What would other funding make the program work like? And then a discussion with council if they want to RFP this to the broader community, or do we want to take another approach? And based on the proposal, do we work directly with Whistler Adaptive? So we can have a conversation.
Thanks, Tim. Cool. Is that it? Do you need anything else from us?
I don't.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Pretty mellow bunch today, eh?
Yeah. So item 5, recommendations to council. Seeing none. Referrals from council. Seeing none. Roundtable discussion. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? Or we just, everybody wants to go to lunch. Let's do that. Looking for a motion to terminate. Moved by Sue, seconded by Ted. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. See you back at 1.